Hey everybody, welcome back with another little ramble here. So I see the biggest news right now that's forefront on my mind that I've been looking at since my my long little ramble from the GTA 6 sort of release. Like pre-ordering and digital release and all that stuff. Basically, since then, it's just been like a constant rhythm of updates and new findings and stuff from the just baffling decision that Sony has made to completely abandon physical release for the PlayStation. And so a lot has already been said by other bigger channels and stuff, and other pages, a lot of hubbub about this. So I wanted to add in my little perspective, but from something that I've noticed people haven't really necessarily been, they've not really spoken about. And it's something that basically what's going on with Sony and PlayStation is something that has been plaguing so many other industries and companies, namely in gaming. Gaming is probably the biggest example of whatever was going on in the world of in that world of stuff. Essentially, this is the highest profile case or symptom of the problem that comes with the sort of like a ship of Theseus sort of scenario. And if you guys don't know what that is, it was mentioned, in the WandaVision, but I'll just go and break it down quickly. Basically, the ship of Theseus is like a concept or a thought exercise in which there's a famous ship, an ancient ship, kept in a museum. However, over time, its preservation requires a replacement of certain boards, planks, and stuff like that, to where eventually, over a long enough timeline, none of the original pieces are there, yet the ship is still like in the same configuration and all that, but is it the same ship? That's sort of like a theoretical, sort of like philosophical sort of quandary. And in this case, in particular with the Sony situation, is that is at play here, and I'll just flat out say it is not the same Sony. Because a lot of people have asked, and like myself included early, have brought up the fact that they are making the same mistakes that Microsoft Xbox did in 2013 upon the announcement of the Xbox One. Now, I remember coverage of that, and that was a response to a bunch of really shitty patents for all the DRM stuff that Sony had pulled out, right? And so, with the scheduling of E3 at the time, Microsoft made the first moves. And it's a theory, and that was like a masterclass of business on Sony's part back then. The theory goes is that Sony was waiting for Microsoft to test the waters to see what the reaction is, and then they were able to quickly pivot in the immediate press conference that they held right afterwards, to where that they affirmed that there's going to be DRM free at the time, at least, because eventually that started creeping into the games later on in that cycle. But it was a situation where basically it's like, hey, we were still sticking with it. You don't have to register your games to an account and blah, blah, blah. You can freely loan it. They snuck in requiring the paid PlayStation Plus for online play in for the PlayStation 4. That was a big trade-off, which I didn't like, that they sort of piggybacked what Xbox did, right? Before that, Sony was PlayStation Network was free for multiplayer. But anyways, so the situation is that they made Microsoft make the first move, and then they just sort of did the opposite, read the room, and then say, hey, we're not going to do all that bullcrap that Microsoft is. The focus is purely going to be on games, not a multi-entertainment system that's like like an entertainment system. No, its focus is still going to be on games, or things going to be $100 cheaper. It's going to have all sorts of stuff. They won that console war, and from then on, it was something that Microsoft still had never recovered from, still haven't, and they're facing their own issues now. So, and I'm retreading that for all the maybe any younger viewers, just to remind everybody what the situation was back then. And you're asking, well, if Sony was smart enough to do that and to read a room back then, why in God's name would they do this now? And because it's a ship of Theseus. I looked it up, and basically a lot of the guys that were in charge, or that were like the big names at Sony at the time, are no longer at the company. I don't know who the current leadership of Sony is, but part of the reason why they're making such a stupid mistake is because they're not the guys who made those original decisions before. It's the same thing with any sort of, if you worked retail, you know, like a bad management can ruin a company, right? So if you naturally grow out of or just lose favor with wherever you're working at because of bad management, a rotation of new employees, the shit rocking of the boat, the vibe is no longer the same, so that eventually when you go back, none of the employees who were there before are still there now. You know what I mean? So it's a different store. Things naturally outgrow themselves and all that, to where even, like, you know, it's just a progression of time. But it's becoming a huger problem in gaming, in the fact that companies now answer to the boardroom instead of the spirit of what the company is really about, because everybody, you know, publicly traded companies, legally they're beholden to increase quarterly earnings, answering to stockholders and all that nonsense. So they trade long-term stability and viability and growth and health of the company for short-term gains, not necessarily because of greed. I mean, all greed is a part of it, but like the fact is, legally they have to do that. Privately owned companies are able to take the hits and do that because they only answer to themselves. So there's trade-offs in that, but that's largely what's the issue with Sony, is that they have to answer to their investors. Same thing with Rockstar, which is part of the reason why they had to bump up the price and probably couldn't do the discount like I had hoped or had that crazy prediction. But Sony abandoning digital, this is a symptom of that. And you see that with a major company like Sony, which is like the biggest example of it, but you've seen that with other studios. Bungie, having a lot of losses. Marathon is nowhere near the hit that it needed to be for Sony. They had a lot of shakeups, a lot of layoffs and stuff, to where the people at Bungie there, I don't think any of them were have any remaining people at Bungie were there when the OG Halo games were made, or the, you know, Destiny, you know what I mean? So that's not the same studio. Same thing with like Obsidian, you know, they're releasing a new game like from the studio that brought you, you know, Fallout New Vegas. Yeah, none of the people working at Obsidian now were the same people who worked on those previous games. Same thing with like DICE, with Battlefield, or, you know, people with Bethesda, or hell, what I mentioned before with Rockstar. None of the bosses at Rockstar were the ones who worked on GTA 5 and Red Dead. It's like all new people, which is why I have no faith in how good, or I'm very skeptical of how good Grand Theft Auto is going to be. But none of this, it's not the same Sony. Kaz Hirai retired post-pandemic. Shuhei Yoshida is out of the company, and I think you briefly read that he was pushed by Jim Ryan at Sony to do a bunch of BS, and he didn't do it, and basically gave him an ultimatum. He quit. He says, you know, he claims that he got fired. Mark Kearney, the guy who you know, helped Kojima fly around the world to find new technologies for his new studio, who was like pretty much the head of development for the PlayStation 4. I don't think he's quite involved with Sony. Ken Kuragi, the father of the PlayStation, he's been out since, I think, for quite some time now. A lot of these guys are getting too old. They're not going to stay with the company. They're not going to, you know, it's just people who don't give a fuck about the brand that are making the decision, it looks like. Either because they're just retarded and don't know their own lessons from the company that led them to be have the market cap in consoles like they have had since the PlayStation 4 times, which made up for the slow start they had from PS3. I mean, that's a huge explanation. Sony's already committed to the change by retooling their factories and stuff instead of just outsourcing disc production to other companies, like what the movie studios are doing for the 4K releases. So it's like that's a major factor in it. You wonder why they're dumb, is because the same people who were there who it's not the same Sony anymore. And that's why I'm not terribly like a brand shill or anything like that. I've gamed Sony for almost all my life because I'm not terribly tech savvy, and I missed the boat on getting a PC before the rise of component costs and stuff, and I just was nice and comfortable with console gaming. But console gaming eventually just changed to where it's no longer what it used to be, you know? The selling points that used to be with consoles being straightforward, everything on the disc, the software up, you don't have to worry about specs and all that stuff. It'll run the disc so long as the hardware and the disc is all right, you know. It'll considerably cheaper than PC. You can put it up and hook it up to a TV in the living room or the game room and stuff on a couch, so you can do split screen multiplayer. Eventually, just everything went to the single player individual experience, to where it's online only, no split screen multiplayer, no split screen co-op and all that stuff. The communal aspects of console gaming has diminished to where now it's Sony with going purely digital with the PS6. There is no selling point for that. You're trading in an all-digital console with no ownership potential for whatever software, whatever games you buy, on an overpriced machine that you could pay a couple $100 more for to build your own PC at that rate, on a closed ecosystem. And it's not like you could pick up your console anymore and game on other TVs. I mean, you probably could, but you could just the remote play stuff. I mean, it's just, there is no point in not getting a PC anymore. I have no idea why Sony does this, but again, it's not the same company anymore. But that's just a major explanation as to why, and I don't think that's brought up enough with all the commentary. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that they're making a stupid decision and they deserve all the flack they get. But also, I'm wondering, here's another thing that I just thought of today. There's I've seen articles of people discussing the fact that Sony is trying to woo people away from canceling the PlayStation Plus accounts with like massive discounts and all that. You still need PlayStation Plus to do multiplayer online, right? If the push is to sell GTA on the PlayStation and people are canceling their PlayStation Plus, I'm wondering how involved Rockstar is into the decision, and they could pressure Sony to not abandon physical, because they're losing their own customers, because that's like a whole section of the player base that's leaving a method of online playing that they're not going to be able to milk anymore, because without PlayStation Plus, they can't play GTA online if they even still get GTA, and without that, they're not going to be able to buy the shark cards that they made bank off of during GTA 5. I wonder, and then I've seen other articles where people discussing the fact that publishers, developers and studios and stuff, retailers were all caught off guard with this decision. This baffling decision. It was almost like akin to, out of the freaking blue, Disney, Marvel canceling all the Netflix shows, which had fantastic showrunners, at least with Daredevil, that they've never reached that quality again with the new Disney Plus stuff, and everybody was like, why? They were doing their own thing and it was nice, like why ruin that game, and they never could do it again. It's just like, it's heartbreaking, because since the PlayStation 1 days, I've been on PlayStation. But if the door is closing on being able to play my current library and older ones because of the lack of ability for hardware and maintenance and stuff, and that the future is purely digital, and it's going to be prohibitively expensive to get into gaming now, because I'm not in a rush to get a PC, even though I should. It sucks, but I'm getting a little up there in the years, and honestly, gaming doesn't do it as much for me as it used to. So like, maybe it is probably the right time for me to walk away from gaming entirely. It sucks. I hate that it happened to be like this, because I wanted to, if I ever have kids and stuff, I want to show them what I grew up on and stuff. But I'm not planning on getting the PlayStation 6 unless they do this. And it's just the gains and the push, the technology push, that the victories that Sony has made is now all for naught. They're abandoning physical entirely, when they, the PS2 with the DVD player helped make DVD mainstream, including the Blu-ray drive and the Blu-ray capabilities of the PlayStation 3 helped win Blu-ray over HD DVD at the time, because again, they replayed the same thing they did with the PlayStation 2. They made a commitment towards regular conventional gaming business model with the PlayStation 4 with a cheaper price point, and they've abandoning their formula for success for a smaller market that gives them no edge whatsoever besides exclusives, which are this just like it's just been a shit show since the pandemic, since they moved to California. Sony Interactive Entertainment moved their headquarters from Japan to California, and then just the headwinds and stuff from COVID is just this sucks, man. It really does. I'm in the apathy stage. I'm pissed off, but I'm not like furious. But I'm just like, it is what it is. I mean, I'm gonna try to, whenever I can afford it, to get as many physical copies as I can, if I'm still able to go play it license free as with as little connection as possible, But it's just I don't. Man, what? Microsoft's not doing any better, but they're piggybacking off of PC with their Microsoft, the Windows, so like they're still in the game, but they're pivoting towards PC, which is in retrospect kind of smart. But like Nintendo, I've never really been a Nintendo person, but they have their own baggage. Just oh god. If Sony repeated what they did in 2013 by baiting Microsoft into the same traps that they did before, and then sticking with what they've done, they'd still be kings. But I guess this is what on a long enough timeline, I mean, the company's just changed. The culture within the corporation changes, the attitudes change, the philosophies and strategies change, and yeah. But those are the elements that I didn't see much people talking about. Is that just none of the familiar faces that we would have otherwise seen on E3 each year when E3 was still a thing are there at the company. That's how I know those names. That's how I know Kaz Hirai, Ken Kutaragi, Shuhei Yoshida, and those guys. I mean, even like Nintendo America no longer has Reggie. He retired out, and then Iwata, I think his name was, he died. It's just, and the only studios that remain the same are the ones that have the OG sort of household name developers who are still in the company. Kojima still has Hideo, of course, and he brought back his people like Shinkawa for the visual stuff, whatever. Kono is still in charge of Project Aces with the composers. Excuse me. All the devs. For all its faults, I mean, at least NetherRealm still has Ed Boon. But smaller teams and other studios just they don't have the same people that are responsible for the stuff that they used to make. And it sucks. So, we'll see how this goes. News is still coming out. I don't know what the hell Sony's thinking, because like they got to keep pushing physical, because again they still got the Blu-ray players. They're still going to be making TVs. I mean, they're falling behind, and these crappy business practices are just not going to help their case. And they're just doubling down on bad stuff like the live service stuff that costs way too much money that failed spectacularly, like Marathon or Concord and stuff. Meanwhile, Gabe at Valve stays doing nothing and keeps winning. Anyways, that's about it. I mean, I'm just. It sucks, dude. It really does. I just gotta enjoy the physical copies of whatever game comes out, like the next Metal Gear collection. I really hope Ace Combat 8 comes out with a physical disc edition. Let's see if Rockstar is willing to release it in disc, but with this move now with Sony in general, I doubt it, which in my case, I kind of hope GTA 6 sucks. So it takes the sting off of skipping that game altogether on principle. Just too many damn people traded ownership for convenience. Same thing happened to the movie industry. They traded convenience, Blockbuster and stuff, or traded that experience and the value of entertainment for making it just a big old streaming mess with, vending machine rentals. Like, it's just not, it's not special anymore. Anyways, that's all I got for today. So, and I'll see you guys later on the next one. Let's see what news brings.